Okay, well, I think in this case we can start slowly. So just as a reminder for everybody, we'll just this is the training number 4 that we have in the IaaS4DR project, and this one is dedicated to funding investment readiness for startups, innovative companies. And we will have 3 speakers today. The first one, you can already see his introduction slide, is Marius Mitroi from Romania. He will introduce himself a bit more in detail, which will speak about venture capital and funding sources. The second speaker will be Neshat Akbari from AWS in Austria, from one of the Austrian partners. She will present one of their funding programs and the criteria that go with them for startups. And the third speaker will be Thor Rodrigues from Atrineo, also one of our partners, who will go more into details into investor engagement pitching. I think most of you are used to the training format by now, after already 3 passed. So we have planned until 12 maximum. Let's see how it goes, depending on the discussion and the questions that you have. We might end up a bit earlier. The meeting is recorded, as probably you can see it from the screen that the recording is going on. The presentations will be made available as usual after the meeting, so you can access it, and or your colleagues can also make use of it. And there will be a short summary as usual also, and that's it. And for the technical things, in terms of projects connection, we are working currently together with the board. I've seen that is here on developing the project pilots in our project, and obviously, whenever needed, we experienced already in the first training. I can remember any of the presentations of the practice presented here can also be an inspiration later for our pilots and for a transfer to other regions. So this is also part of the sharing material that we can use in our other activities. Having done that, I think we can start with the first presentation. Marius, you are ready. We can see your presentations, the introduction slides. So I let you introduce yourself a bit more in detail and give your presentation. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Luke. My name is Marius Mitroi. I'm with the Armenian Research and Innovation Funding Agency, and my role is to lead a team in charge of innovation and entrepreneurship within the agency. As more of my background, I am a startup founder. I raised capital from VCs in the past. I actually also invested in different startups in the last 10 years. So I will discuss today a bit about funding sources, venture capital funding stages, and if you have any question, just please write them down, or we will also have a Q&A in the end. But this is not like a recipe for funding. It's just an experience on how the venture capital scene looks in Europe, and maybe we can talk a bit also about the VC in the US, because it is a totally different scene. So we will start today with an overview on the startup and funding stages. Because it's very, very important to understand in which stage and which kind of funding do you need or you can actually access. Because I saw this in a lot of startup events and pitches, that startup founders do not correctly identify their stage, and therefore they are not able to go for the funding available in that stage. And then we'll talk about, of course, on how the European VCs look like, what type of funding can you get, and how can you try to create a synergy between public funding and private investments, and where it's each role is safe. So this is a short overview about what we're going to talk about today. And what I would like to stress from the beginning is that funding is just one of the 5, say, pillars of startup, because so you have an idea, you need also a team, you need great execution, you need cash, of course, but it's very, very important that you will actually have the right timing in launching your startup. And I can talk in each category from my experience and how I identify those stages that are very, very important. And funding, in my opinion, is not the most important part. It's an important part, but not the most important part, because usually if you are okay on the other 4 pillars, funding usually comes. It's very important to understand where we are in our startup stage. So because if we are in the ideation part, where we actually create a concept, then nobody will actually invest in us. And it's very important because it's just an idea, it's not yet validated, we do not have enough trust in us as in our team or in our idea that we are able to translate to other investors. The second part is the proof of concept. So once we have the idea, all the concepts set up, we need to validate and create a proof of concept. And usually in this part, it's mostly bootstrapping and friends and family, or even government grants. And we'll discuss them in detail. But usually that's a very, very high risk stage where private investors don't usually go to fund. Once we have our proof of concept, we are entering our pre-seed and seed stage, where we can go and talk with angel investors and seed funds. And nowadays not so much, but in the past I think that crowdfunding was also an option. We do still have crowdfunding platforms, but I didn't see as much traction on that in the latest years. Now, in the early stage, we can go for a venture capital fund that is, let's say, specialized in early stage investments, and go from that through all the growth phases, like Series A, Series B, and then private equity, and in the end, hopefully, everybody would be able to exit the startup or publish it on the stock market. So it's very important for us to understand what is the stage in our development, so we can properly target the funding source available. And as you see here, this is like a lifeline of the startup. So in the first stage, where it's usually startup fails 90% of the time, you use the 3F, which is family, fools, and friends, it's called, and also angel investors once we have the proof of concept. So each of us in each of our businesses, we need to understand correctly in which stage we are and how can we target correctly possible investors. And it's very important to understand that in the initial stages, we have a high risk of product, of research, and in the later stages, we have a high risk of that is imposed by the market. Usually, private investors will try to mitigate only the market risk and not the product risk. So this is why it's very important to understand where you are and who can actually help you grow your business. Now, what is bootstrapping? Usually, bootstrapping is self-funding using personal savings or using initial revenues from your business. And this actually, once you go through the bootstrapping phase, you actually create trust for future investments because they see that you are you want to actually fully invest your money and your time in. And then they will be able also to invest their money. Of course, you have a limited scalability because you cannot scale a product with limited funding, and you also have a personal financial risk. But probably 90% of businesses are starting with their own money and bootstrapping. Now, there's also in this stage, you can try to access government grants. And now, sometimes this is very useful, and the fact that you don't give any equity, so there is no dilution, the money will come with, there is not free money, is very important. This is maybe cheaper money than say private investors, but it's not really smart money because you only get a grant, you don't get guidance, you don't get mentoring. Sometimes in some universities, they do have commercialization grants that are able to give you also some acceleration programs, but they are very limited, at least in my experience. But government grants, it's a very important funding source. And if you are in a place where you can't get private funding, government can be a solution. But keep in mind that there is also a cost with a government grant that you need to take into account in order for your business to actually follow the implementation step that you need. Now, as friends, family, and as investors, they actually say all they're saying was family, fools, and friends, who are the initial people that want to invest in your business. And usually angel investors that are high net individuals that are willing to take a risk with you, but they will also provide mentorship and probably will take a seat in your company board to try to guide you in order for them to protect their investment. In this stage, you start giving equity from your company. So once you are going for private investors, you need to give them something back. And usually this is equity that can be transformed in money in the end when the next funding round starts. Now, going back to our main topic today, venture capital. So there are different types of venture capital funds, and this is very important because for a startup, VC is a source of funding in order to have company growth, but usually for the government, the venture capital is a tool to develop the local innovation ecosystem. And there's a huge difference from venture capital in Europe and venture capital in the US. Because usually in the US, most venture capital funds are fully private owned, and they do have bigger investment funds. And in the EU, we mostly have government-backed VC funds, which use money from European Investment Fund to create local funds that invest in early stage to growth stage ventures. But going back, so first of all, everyone needs to understand that the venture capital fund is mostly there to generate funds and profit for themselves. So they will definitely look in their due diligence process to target high growth potential companies. And this is something that you need to keep in mind when we're going to talk with venture capital funds. And And of course, there are different types of, you have early VCs for pre-seed and Series A, and then you have growth VCs for Series B, and then you have corporate VCs, and you also have private equity funds. But usually for a startup, they go for early stage VC. At least this is what I saw in Europe. And I think that we do have a lack of Series B funds in Europe. So this is maybe another discussion that we can have. Now, as I told you, it's not about the money. So it's very important to identify venture capital funds specialized in your type of business. So if, for example, you are going for a retail business, where you create a marketplace, then you need to talk with venture capital funds that have this type of investment in their investment thesis, because then they will also have specialized people that can help you in each stage to grow. And this is more important than the actual money. It's more important because having access to experts in an area that will save you a lot of money wasted in different marketing campaigns. And I do have some personal experience in this part. And again, you need to choose properly your venture capital fund based on their actual experience and how can they give you expertise in your area. So it's not just about the money, it's also about the mentorship and strategic guidance that can help you succeed. Now, how do VCs evaluate businesses? So first of all, you need to have a high growth potential. So of course, they definitely need the product to be innovative, to create added value, because and then to have a significant market, or even to create a dedicated market for your product. But they are looking for high growth potential because they will make their money in the next funding round. And in order for them to get to the next funding round, they need to be able to grow the company and fast. One of the key elements in VC funding is the actual team. So because the product can be changed in the development process, but the team is very, very important, because the team will actually create the trust between the startup and the venture capital fund. And being able to create that trust, you will be able to have follow-up rounds. They know this. The team also needs to be coachable. So nobody wants to talk to a know-it-all entrepreneur, because usually they fail. So you need to have a management team that is able to execute a plan, but also to be coachable. Now, in the due diligence process, so it depends definitely on the stage that you are in, but mainly they are looking at your financials, your intellectual property, if it's property secured, if your property rights are owned by the company, and then they'll try to evaluate the market potential and even the geographical area where you can actually deploy your product. So this is why usually people say, what is your unique value proposition and the market differentiators. And this is very important, because this is what gives you the edge in funding. So everybody wants to be the first investor in a high-tech product that actually have a market, because there are a lot of high-tech products that they don't have a market. So again, it's about the unique value proposition, but also about the available market, or the possibility to create a dedicated market for your product. And this is the concept called Blue Ocean, which is a totally different thing. And we can talk about that if you have any questions. And of course, you also need to be able to identify the risk associated with your venture. because being able to identify to properly identify the risks, and you will be able to mitigate that. Now, as I told you, it's a totally different scene in VC funding in Europe and in the US. And definitely we have strong hubs like London, Berlin, Paris, Amsterdam, and also nowadays in Eastern Europe, we do have venture capital funds that are active and try to generate investment pipelines for later stage venture capital funds. The main difference, as I told you, is that in Europe, most of the venture capital funding is also government backed through European Investment Fund, compared with the US funds that are mainly private. And this is something that you need to take into account, because you will have also European regulation that you need to comply with. Now, in Eastern Europe, in the last 10 years, we actually had a lot of venture capital funds, not a lot. We have many venture capital funds that appeared in the last 10 years. And this also helped companies like, Bolt, Whitehat, and others. And because those were a success, they generated new venture capital funds. So now, in 10 years later, we do have some private venture capital funds active, which are really small, and the one that actually are able to fund Series A and Series B are also EIF backed. But definitely, we have an investment landscape that can help us also deploy and raise funds outside Europe. So this is very important. Usually, when you look at funding, you look at the market that you target. And if your market is US or Asia, then you also need to look at venture capital available in those markets. Because as I said before, venture capital doesn't come only with funds, but also with expertise. And if you need to deploy a product in the US, then you will need expertise from that market. Now, if we look at the report in 2024, we'll see that we have almost 4 billion investments that were reported in Eastern Europe, which is huge. I mean, compared with the landscape that 10 years ago, I think it's, I don't know the actually growth rate, but it's definitely a few 100% of what we had 10 years ago. And we can see that we have champion is Turkey, but also we have the Czech Republic, Poland, Greece, Lithuania, and Estonia. Even Romania has 130 million investments in 2024, which is great. Why it is very important is because with these investments, you create a lot of expertise within those companies, and that expertise can spill over in different other startups that will emerge based on those businesses. And you think of a founder that exited a company with, for example, 100 million, they will definitely create an investment fund for investing in early stage startups, just because they will probably use those money to create more money. So this is the recipe, say, that I saw in the last years in Eastern Europe, where startup funders that exited their companies created new venture funds. Now, so from Series A to Series C, as you can see here, you have just 2.4 billion, which, as I said, we do have a lack of funds, of venture capital funds in Series A to C, and I think this will change in the next 5 years as company grows. A lot of companies grow, and they will try to attract funding outside Europe, and then the VC funds for late stage will be created. Now, 10 years ago, there were two, in the case of Romania, there were two venture capital funds that were funding pre-seed investments. What that meant was that they were able to create a pipeline for later stage investments. And this is what happened. And now those funds change from early stage to late stage. So from pre-seed to seed and Series A. And that's how we have those huge investments in 2024. But now if you look at the landscape, we will see that we do not have pre-seed investments for early stage startups. So this is something that we need to balance, as from the government side, they will need to balance available funding for early stage startups with available funding for late stage startups. And you can see all of this in the How to Have report, which is really, really interesting if you have time to look at it. So now this is a distribution of investment for volume for the countries. And why is this important as a startup founder to look at this? Is because you will be able to see the available market, available funding market in your country. And this usually goes from year to year, so it grows. But you can also understand in which country you can actually go and target that market because there is funding available for your startup. So always when you are trying to deploy a product in a market, so you need to see if there is a demand for that product, but also to understand if there is an available money to actually grow the product in that market. Now, this is a top of companies that raise venture capital in the developing countries, and I think are good examples that you can go, and also you will find out that those founders go public and talk about their investment and how they raised it, and it's in my opinion a great success stories that people can get inspired from. Okay, so I just wanted to come back to Romania. So we do have 4 companies that were able to get from 54 million to 5 million. So we do have around 70 million invested in 2024 in Romania, and these companies that already deployed their product outside Romania. So mainly they targeted the US market. So this is also very important. I don't think that, for example, in market as Romania, which is a pretty small market that is not able to take advantage of innovations that are coming from this market, usually founders go to bigger markets like US and Asia, because the total available market is bigger, and then the total market that they can target is bigger. And this is also something that you need to take into account when you are trying to get investment, because this is the first question that an investor will ask you: what is your total available market, and how much of that are you going to take over in the next 1 to 3 years? And there are a lot of examples in Eastern Europe, and I think this is very, very important, and it's also inspiring. Now, going back to public funding. So, and I think that in early stage startups, this is a very, very important part that everybody should take into account. Nowadays, we do have European funding that is targeting private companies that are in early stage funding and with high risk research projects. And this is very, very important because usually with innovation comes also high risk, from, as I told you, from product development risk until market risk, and the time needed to create a proof of concept and to create a product can actually outline the available market, because you can create a product for an available market next year, but your product can be ready for the market in 2 years, and this is can be a fail from the beginning. This is where EU funding comes in, and you have EIC, Pathfinder, Transition Accelerator, which are very good programs. The good part is that they do give you up to 15 million. The not so good part is that it's a very competitive program, and just a few of the European startups will be able to get those money. But if your project is really innovative, then this is the way to go. So use EIC programs to fund your initial startup. The best part is that you don't give equity in the initial stages, so you won't get diluted at all. Now, there is a very important part in the transition from research to market, and usually it's called technology transfer, and this part comes with a lot of risk on the research side. And this is why, for example, like Horizon Europe can help mitigate those research risks, and because getting funding within the Horizon Europe program, you will also need to collaborate with research institutions from across Europe, then lowering your chance to fail in product development. Now, I think a very important part in funding is blending public and private funding. And in the last few years, I think this became more and more obvious. Once people understand their startup development stage, and when they can use public grants or government funding, and when they can use private funding. And each comes with their pros and cons. So as I told you, public funding is just funding. You don't get no expertise with that. But then again, you get no dilution and you don't give any part of your company. And then you have private investment where you do need to give up equity in your company, but it also comes with a lot of expertise and knowledge. Now, accessing VCs is nowadays pretty standard. So most of them, once you say are compliant with their own criteria, they do have different calls. Some of them are always open to receiving pitch decks from companies, but they also participate in different events, and we do have some amazing events of startups in Europe where you can directly meet VCs and elevate pitch your business, or you can go in startup accelerators like Y Combinator or Techstars, or other European accelerators where you can get mentorship and also some initial funding, but you also get access to a network of investors. So I don't think that this is an issue. Once you understand where you are in your startup life, then you know where you can actually go to meet possible investors. Now, of course, in order to improve your success rate, you need to be able to properly communicate your business. And there are a lot of programs that will teach you how to develop a strong pitch deck, and there is also a presentation later today about this. But so if you have all of this, it's still the main issue is that you need to be able to create trust between you as a startup founder and an investor. And I think this comes in time. And as long as you know your business very good and you're able to communicate it to others, I think this is the success road path that you can take. Now, any questions? I can't see the.
I can see that. So the floor is open for questions. Thank you, Marius. Maybe a first quick remark from my side. I like very much, especially that that is my perspective. You provided a good insight into Eastern Europe venture capital market and deals, which is an information was not present to my mind. Possibly I did not look into it in details, but I like the approach, especially obviously looking at our consortium, let's say, which is strongly embedded into Eastern Europe. So this is. Did you also? I was not fast enough to check if there are from there any markets or sectors that are more getting funding than others? Is it more deep tech? Is it more like services, or do you see any trends? Or
so the main trend is high growth potential startups, which mainly are ITNC, unfortunately, because they will definitely fund an app or a web-based company because it's easier to scale. And this is normal because they want to make money. Just nowadays, they are trying to look at deep tech. And these are those companies that you saw, for example, in Romania, that are deep tech, and they were able to get a lot of funding, but mainly outside Europe. Usually deep tech companies, they are really cash intensive. So they need funds from outside Europe.
And when this happens with these deep tech companies, because I'm personally located in Germany, and with many people say, okay, the deep tech companies, many of them tend not only to look for funding outside of Europe, but then they move outside of Europe together with the funding. Is this happening too in your area? Or?
Yeah. So almost all deep tech companies that. Or even the unicorns that we had are now in the US. So they do still have, the research in Romania, some of them, but they are mainly in the US. Just because we are not able to fund those type of companies once they reach that.
Okay. Yeah, you addressed a bit what would have been my main question. Is there still a benefit for the local economy, even if they move outside? Do you still see the benefit of having them coming?
Exactly. So the main benefit are the expertise of people that work in that company. Most of them start new companies locally and with their own money. So you see a lot of spillover effect after you have a unicorn in the country. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So I started with the questions. To give you time also to think of your own questions, please raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Yeah, Boris, please go on.
Sorry, microphone. Hi. I was very eager to listen to the stuff. It's, I would say, kind of revealing for me, especially the distribution of the investment volume per country, where I saw the Slovenia having only 2 ways of funding, pre-seed and seed. And this is the problem in Slovenia in general, that I would say the underdevelopment of the capital market, let's say. And this is something that is what you just addressed recently, that basically a lot of high-tech companies actually from Slovenia, they move immediately out. So they don't go for the I would say local venture capitalists, but they go directly globally, and a lot of them end up in Silicon Valley. But just yesterday I was watching to Michio Kaku interview, let's say, where he says that the biggest problem is currently that actually all the brain, which are 50% from abroad, like from our countries, are basically returning to their home markets, and this is a problem. So this is opportunity in a way that we learn these, I would say, processes, but then again, that also I would say, local venture capitalists should grab this opportunity somehow and invest. So I don't know how it's in other countries, but in Slovenia, I think that we are kind of lacking on this offer variety, at least. So I'm just looking for the experiences. How do you handle these things in your countries, if there is some experience about that? How to attract this and stay, that investors are actually here and the companies are not leaving?
The only way to keep companies in the geographical area is to create a bigger market for them, because this is the main reason why they leave. So usually they are targeting bigger markets. So yeah, it is a huge challenge, and I think it's a great question. I don't have the answer to that, but I think that if we will be able to develop our market, or even, I think the easiest part is to create that, common European market. I like really have that. This I think would be a solution, because as individual countries, I don't think that we will be able to compete with the US market or even Asia. So.
Yeah. It's an
economy of scale at the end. Prevails.
Yeah. I think it was Clinton. It was Clinton saying it's the economy stupid, or something like that. So it's we had a similar discussion recently when talking about internationalizations of company Marius with German and Belgian and French people, and they was saying the same. The thing is, you still need in Europe to consider each country as a more or less foreign market, more or less. Which makes it, but okay. But I tried. Maybe someone has an input to the question raised by Borit, because we have several countries here. How to deal with this issue of having underdeveloped venture capital market, or how to benefit still when there is a unicorn coming out of the country, but it's getting out. But what can we still do for developing our region with that? Because this is also just coming back to the project, let's say, what can we do? I think Marius had one suggestion, and at least one option, which is to see, look, those people, then some of them leave the company, they create their own company, they might get back to the home market. I remember from previous, it's outside of these regions, countries like Cyprus, they might have also specific connection, but they do a lot with working with the diaspora and so on. So maybe this is one thing, but I don't know, is there someone willing to say something about how you deal with that in other countries, Hungary or Czech Republic or Slovakia? No voluntary. Do I have to ask person by person? I will not do that. Maybe you were not, did not prepare that to that. But still, if we think of our project, would be interesting to identify potential action paths. What can we do as a business support organization at the local level? Borit, how are you dealing with that? I understand you have you are dealing, at least you have those questions in mind in your organizations?
Yeah, basically, I was kind of surprised, as I mentioned, since I'm following the scene that a lot of the companies went out already, like these unicorns. On the other side, I would say, accelerators and also venture capitalists have the experience because they are companies that were in the Silicon Valley. Cozy Lab, for example. So there is knowledge, there is a network that they have,
Okay.
and yet somehow I don't know whether it's a culture of not trusting the investors, and not letting everybody in. I don't know. And on the other side, they go for Kickstarter, let's say, and okay, they are not, I would say, very deep tech, but nevertheless, the good ideas are grown here, but somehow they end up somewhere else. And I'm trying to understand what's the catch here, and how basically to bring these venture capital ideas closer to the, I would say, startups. This is, I don't know, I cannot get it why we are so different from other markets in that practice, because we are over jumping this stage somehow. So I'm always eager to hear the experiences, how your markets are actually handling this. But on the other side, we have this issue with that there is not a variety of funding, let's say. And this is something that's macroeconomic. But on the other side, a lot of work around is done through these transnational possibilities with capital being able to move, or you move your company. And lately, due to the Trump policy on current ongoings, so I think that there will be a lot of how should I say, people will return with the companies, despite of the fact of the scale that we set. It's essential. So that could be a potential for European companies somehow to be satisfied with the markets here in Europe, EU market, or even going to Asia. But I doubt, because there is a competition fierce. So I don't know how.
I think that this is a very, very strong discussion. And in my opinion, in order for us to actually be ahead in some areas, we need to create specialized funding based on available industry. Because usually the best companies or the high growth companies are the ones that are going business to business. So if you have a proper available industry that can buy the product, or that can use the product to have better processes, or better optimization, or whatever, they will definitely create a bigger market for that startup. And I think also you have this issue in US. You do not have hardware production, not at all. And even nowadays, it's cheaper to create a hardware product in China that is anywhere in Europe. And maybe some industrial policies that will be able to create the proper ecosystem in order to grow these companies will help us, take the lead in that area. And then I definitely am sure that US funds will come to Europe. I mean,
the funny part is that the majority of these high-tech companies in Slovenia are actually moving towards the military equipment development, and these are specialists which have no logic. Basically, what we are talking about, the ordinary business of, I don't know, software development as such, but we are going to the satellites, stuff like that, which overjumps this. We have like two very different, very low tech and very high tech stuff, and this is a totally different market. That also can be a reason for the situation that we have.
So the dual use opportunity nowadays is 10 times bigger than the commercial one. And this is, I mean, we can look at it as an opportunity. So people can create technologies that are able to be, applied in the military, and then spin that out to the civilian side. And they can use available funding for dual technologies, and then also deploy it on the commercial market. And yeah, if this is what is available, then this is what will be created.
Thank you.
Thank you
Makes
for those insights. Yeah, makes sense to me too. And also we've seen that, I mean, it's not like it's completely out of scope to develop those VC markets. I've seen on your slides, Marius, that some countries like Estonia and Lithuania were relatively successful. I mean, if you compare them to, there are countries which are the size of a big city in Germany. I mean, it's and then or in other countries, and then well, if you make a ratio per capita, probably they would be quite good. It's not like it's completely impossible to do things, no, in such countries. I don't know.
You're saying that the smallness is no excuse.
Yes, it seems. It seems. I mean, they it's not like they are small countries, and they don't have a. They also have a short history in capital market, and it seems there are some results. I don't know the details. Sorry, Marius. Yeah,
so there is also another layer that is very important and people don't usually discuss it, is the cultural side of Europe compared to US, where it's a totally different culture. And well, I mean, we are more socially inclined, and they are more business inclined. And yeah, this is also, I think, that plays a huge role in all of this development.
Okay.
I agree. Tradition, yeah, religion, culture, whatever, yeah. System that we lived in previously. So yeah, that everything is piling up basically as a burden that we have to overcome somehow.
This is an angle for business support providers, is the education, promotion, this is something we can act on possibly, and not short term, but it's something you can act on. Okay. I'm looking for raised hands. No additional raised hands, I think. No, cannot see anything. Okay, Marius, in this case, I would say again a big thank you to you for the presentation. Again, I liked it very much, with some specific insights on the Eastern European market, which is not always highlighted in this way, and that was quite interesting. I see a lot of applause. It's on Teams meetings. It's always a bit silencious, but it's it's still good. So thank you for that, Marius. And of course, you are invited to stay with us until the end of the meeting. But if you have other commitments, I know you wanted to be first to speak. Maybe you will have some startups to approach for funding in the coming hours. But it was very good to have you with us.
Thank you. It's great indeed. There are other questions. We can. Blanca is also here, and she can get the questions, and we can answer them by email. If that's
yes. Thank you, Marius. And you are one of our project partners. So you also, Raluca is usually joining the meetings, but you are not out of reach. So we have the contact details. So that's for sure. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the two next presentations, they will actually address more in detail some of the aspects raised by Marius in his first presentation. We will hear about pre-seed and seed financing programs for startups from public funding organizations. So this will be IaaS. So this is one of the parts that Marius raised, and towards the end of the presentation, also Marius addressed the pitching issue and so on, and we will hear later from Thor about how to prepare good pitching. But first we will go with the presentation from IaaS, and it's I've seen that our speaker has joined us in between, Neshat, I'm not sure how to pronounce, Akbari from IaaS. So
Neshat is perfect. Good morning.
Good morning. I would invite you to join the stage, and please, you can introduce yourself a bit, your organization. Also, we know a bit, of course, as IaaS is a project partner, and give your presentation. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I hope you can hear me, and I will share my presentation, and hopefully you can also see it. So I will share it now. Does it work?
Yes, it works. You can go on.
Okay. Perfect, because I had last week a little bit of internet problems, but I think it's working now. So yes, so you already know about AWS a little bit, but so I was asked to talk about funding readiness in terms of our grant and funding program, pre-seed, seed financing, innovative solutions. So I will start just with a few words about Austria Wirtschaftsservice. And then I will give you an overview of the terms and conditions of our funding program. And then to be a little bit more hands-on and to give you more insights, I will also show you our application documents. And then we can discuss how they help also the projects to really get ready for our funding. And then, of course, a little bit time for questions and answers. But I suggest whenever you have a question in between, also please feel free to just ask. Okay? So just a few words. The Austria Wirtschaftsservice GmbH is the promotional bank of the Austrian federal government, and we support all types of businesses and entrepreneurs in the different stages of their development. We have different instruments such as guarantees and loans. So mostly it's financial instruments, also grants and equity is what we provide. But we have also some consulting and coaching services, for instance, regarding intellectual property. As I said, we help and support the business in different stages. So from developing their first ideas and setting up a business, this is also where pre-seed and seed financing innovative solutions is located. And then we also have some services for expansion and also connecting services, for instance, connecting startups with investors or with cooperation partners. And now about my funding program. This is, in a nutshell, we support innovative, scalable projects with high social added value in the pre-seed and startup phase. So for developing their idea and up to going into the market. We have two modules. Okay, so the basic difference between them is in the pre-seed phase, you have an idea and you want to develop a prototype or a proof of concept for this idea, but it still needs to be validated. In seed financing, the proof of concept is already given and validated and now needs to be further developed for market readiness. We are open to all industries, for instance, creative industries or low-tech and social enterprises. Everything basically other than deep tech, because we have the sister funding program for deep technologies. So they are the right address for that. And we focus on all other industries, but always it's important to have a societal impact. Now I will come to the details for pre-seed. Who is eligible to apply? In pre-seed, we have mostly natural persons, teams, before founding the company. But also, if you have recently founded a company, it is possible to apply up to 6 months after foundation. As I said, the content of your project, the goal has to be the development of a proof of concept. We provide a non-repayable grant and some advisory services. The grant amount is up to 100,000 euros and 90% of the total project costs if the gender bonus is granted. Otherwise, it's 89,000 euro and 80% of the project costs. I will come to the prerequisites of the gender bonus more later on. The project duration is 1 year for pre-seed, and it's under de minimis state aid law. Now for seed financing, you already have to have founded the company, and it has to be a micro small enterprise, and you can apply up to 4.5 years after foundation. And here we found all the activities for reaching the market maturity. It's also a non-repayable grant, which is very attractive, of course, and it's up to 400,000 euro, a maximum of 90% of the total project costs with the gender bonus. Otherwise, it's 356,000 euro and 80% of the total project cost for a maximum of 2 years. And here it's under AGVO state aid law. Okay, so these were all the facts about the prerequisites. Maybe that's also interesting about our gender bonus. The idea behind that is, of course, you also know that female entrepreneurs are not as much represented in the startup field as men. So here the government also wanted to, yes, support and also give some bonuses to female founders and also to male founders who include women also in their teams. So it has to be a little bit more attractive also for female founders to apply for our funding program. And this is why if you have women in your team with more than 25% of shares, then you can have the higher amount of the grant. The women also need to have a managerial role throughout the whole project and work more than 50% than the normal hours, so have to have a significant role in the project. And of course, you can reach more funding, and also that means also for the equity of the team, it reduces the amount, and I will come to that also a little bit more in detail later. I think this is not very important now for you, but just to have it mentioned also, of course, we support projects which are located in Austria. Value creation also has to be mainly in Austria, and a full-time commitment is also requested. So I would like to sum up what does it mean for being funding ready. And maybe the core questions also in the interviews and when we consult the startup teams, what are their main also maybe pitfalls. So for pre-seed, it's all about the team, of course. As I said, we have also those initiatives to promote more women, for instance, in the team. So in this founding phase and before applying for our program, they need to think about who is really the core of my team. And maybe they want to include people. Of course, the most important factor is to have all the competencies that are requested for the development of your proof of concept, but also have a little bit more diversity and what are the effects of that. That is one of the core questions before applying. For seed financing, one of the pitfalls here is the independence of the company, which is it basically means that no other company can hold shares more than 25%, or your company cannot hold other shares more than 25% of another company. And this is sometimes a problem, especially in Austria. I don't know in other countries. We have a holding structure very much recommended from also tax consultants, for instance, or of course, if you have the first investor, or some people have already another company and they hold the shares through the other company. So you need to also think about this prerequisite if you are willing also to maybe change the shareholding structure of your company in order to be eligible for our funding program. The full-time commitment, this is called also quite new, of course, is a very high risk also in the pre-seed phase. And we can see after Corona crisis, there were many people already in an unemployed situation, for instance, and it was not such a big risk for them to change and to get into the startup world. Last year, to be honest, we felt also in the number of applications that people were a little bit more hesitant also to give up, for instance, their jobs in order to found their own company. So this is a very core question, and we require one person at least throughout the whole project duration to be fully committed. And if you have another job, you have to already commit to give up your job if you receive a positive answer from us. Yes, last but not least, the financial resources. Of course, 10 or 20% of the total project costs are not covered by our grant. So you have to think about ways to cover that gap. And this is also something that stresses a lot of founding teams. 50% of the rest of the finance of this gap has to come from the founding team members. So it cannot be, for instance, if you're already a company with 3 years and you already have some revenue, still we want also to see that the founding team, if you receive 400,000 non-repayable grant, that you also as a founding team member, you are fully committed also with some financial risk. So these are the core questions that you need to answer and to be funding ready. Now I come a little bit to the content criteria of our funding program that are very unique. I mean, the high degree of innovation, I think many funding programs need that, and also high market opportunities and scalability. But especially for our funding program, it's all about the added value, a high social added value in one of those certain areas. Diversity, equality, integration, inclusion is one. Environment, resources, climate protection is the second. I think at the moment the most important one. Then we have health and care, education as another area, mobility, transportation, and then urban development, rural life, and housing. I come to each of these topics then now a little bit more in detail, and this is something that the projects also need to really work on. How do they want to present a high degree in all of these areas, because we are a very competitive grant. So it's not like first come, first serve, or okay, if you meet all the criteria, you will automatically receive our grant. But you have to stand out really, and we have a success rate of below 10%, or maybe around 10% at the moment. So this competition is really tough, and you have to convince the jury in a very short and precise way that you have a high degree of innovation. Of course, we say that normally we don't invent something completely new. Maybe sometimes it is putting something from one area to another area, but there must be also some certain type of development risk, because if there is no risk at all, then you might be easily getting also a loan or a private investor. So we want to be a high-risk funding for highly innovative projects with high societal value. So about the scalable business model, we also say, of course, because sometimes if you're highly impact-oriented in the social enterprise area, then you forget sometimes about the profit. So this is something that is also very important for us. It has to have a solid business model. Of course, in the pre-seed phase, some things might change, some details cannot be validated yet, of course, but altogether that has to be a plausible business model. And something that is also a problem sometimes, and we try to encourage the startups to be open in this area, is the competition. We always say, if you know your competition well enough, then you can say how you differentiate yourself and what is really your USP. We see that sometimes some startups say, oh, there is no competition at all because what we do is so unique. But then we always ask, okay, but there is a problem that you're addressing and people are solving it somehow at the moment. So maybe it's not a direct competitor, maybe it's more indirect, but please think about how, what other ways is there to solve the problem that you're addressing, and be very, very open with that. So this is something that they struggle sometimes with. The impact, here it is always important to say, okay, think about if your problem, and we talk about the impact-related innovation, think about if your idea really adds to the problem that you're addressing, to reduce really, for instance, if it is about CO2 reduction, and you only shift maybe from one way to another, but at the end, it's the same amount of CO2 that a company is producing, etc., then it is not an innovative project in our terms. Yeah, so the problem solution fit and the impact that you're addressing always has to be the main focus. We have the experience, for instance, that the SDGs are very popular and they try to say, okay, for all the, I don't know, we take out 9 SDGs and we say somehow it's related to all of them. This is something that we strongly do not recommend. We say take out 1, maybe 2 impact areas that you are addressing and really show us how you help to solve this problem. I think I can skip this this slide because basically we can fund all types of costs. There are only very small exceptions, such as real estate or vehicles. Other than that, basically you can put into your project all types of costs that you need for the prototype, for the proof of concept, for the market entry, and for also setting up the company. The submission process is, we have an online tool for that, and there are certain documents that you need to submit. The documents I will show you then in detail, the most important ones. It's the pitch deck, the business plan, and the integrated planning sheet. Other than that, of course, your CVs, IDs, and they can submit in German or in English. However, all the documents are in German only. I needed to translate them for this presentation. I hope that DeepL worked well enough. We will find out later. And then there is one very key question always: when can we apply? When is the next jury session? And we do not give this dates because we say, please apply whenever you are ready. All the questions have to be answered, and we have this multi-stage evaluation process, and there is at least one jury session per quarter. So I think it is fair enough to wait maybe 3 months, 4 months from the date of application till the final answer, and just consider that for the planning. Yes, as I said, it's a highly competitive, so around 10% success rate. Yeah, this is the next steps that we recommend them if we give this presentation a little bit longer to the interested people, a target group. This is the process. So they need to gather all the information. They need to download the application documents and prepare them. And then they are very welcome to get in touch with us and to take the opportunity also to discuss their project idea with us. And then we can give them some insights, whether or not it fits to our funding program, and maybe in which areas they need to still work more, for instance, about the impact if we cannot see it. There was one very good slogan that I learned from an investors club. They said, "Don't make me think." And sometimes this is something that we need to also tell them more, because if I need to search for the information, if I have to search for the USP, then maybe they need to go for another round. And I always tell them, please ask people to look up your, for instance, to look at your pitch deck, people who have no clue at all what you're doing, because they need to also understand the innovation like in an instant. Then you did a good job in your documents. Okay, so to give you now a little bit also an idea about our funded projects, here are some examples. So 1for1 is a project in the area of diversity, equality, and inclusion. They have this system where you go to the supermarket and you buy noodles, for instance, and then the same package will be donated to people in need. That is a concept that we also know from different other companies, but it is really unique to include this in the like standard grocery and supermarket. So they are already successful in I think 7 or 10 supermarkets in Vienna or in Austria, and they're expanding. They also could receive after pre-seed. They're already in the seed financing stage. Then we have, for instance, Lambiotic in the area of health and care. They developed a new type of bacteria. They included one type of bacteria in a lotion to also address a very large area of skin diseases. And then we have 2 projects in seed financing, both in the segment of environment, resources, climate protection. For instance, Supaso, they have an environmentally friendly packaging. I don't know why my slides always slip to the next, sorry for that. So it is for cool packages, and the materials only recycled paper, which is really fascinating. And then we have Money Care, that's an investment app, and it compares different companies with their sustainability goals. And so each and every person who wants to invest can say, okay, for me, for instance, I want to invest only in companies with a high degree of diversity in the management team, and then they will find and give you those figures. Okay, so that was the first first part of my presentation. Do you have any questions? And then I will go to the application documents.
I would definitely have at least one or two questions, maybe, yeah, just at this stage. When when we were looking for presentation, so your colleagues Stefan and Christina mentioned, it's a nice application process, and it helps company give positive feedback, because they say it helps themselves improve the understanding of the business. Do you experience that? Do you see like an evolution, or maybe companies coming back a second time with a much better application, or do you have a consulting process which in this phase, or?
Yes. For instance, MoneyCare, that is the one project that I showed you, they were declined twice before then they applied for the third time, and then they could receive the funding. Because there was a problem. They said, okay, we want to give information about the sustainability facts and figures of each and every company, but they did not show us how they want to do that. And they said, okay, we will just look up the information that is in their annual reports. And then we said, okay, but how is this innovative? How does that help the companies? And they did not manage to give those information like in an instant, and so they really needed to work on their pitch deck mostly. And for instance, they also had an impact academy, and they had so many ideas. They put that all in sheets, like the number of the font. They had like everything in number 8. The whole slide was full with text. So that's like basics. Of course, I understand. We always tell them not too much, not too little information, please. But sometimes it's a learning process, and we can see that it helps them a lot to receive the feedback. I will show you now the application, not the real application documents of projects, of course, but the templates, and then you can see what we ask there.
Okay, just maybe one or two other quick questions, but from my side, but also the others. Do you have a picture more or less like where your startups come from and where they go afterwards? What kind of people are coming? Is it directly from university? Is it from businesses, from people with market experience? And are they growing and looking for venture capital after that? Because we were discussing in venture capital before. Do you see that? Are you following up on that also?
Yes. So as I said, during like 2022 and 2023, we saw that really people from all different areas, like it was still like post-corona, they were working on different ideas, and so it was from different fields, and they were willing to put all their efforts in a startup. And it was really also, if you're talking about age, for instance, really from early 20s to the 50s, I said in this range, everything was present. Now it's a little bit maybe different again, at least for pre-seed. Before founding, there are of course a lot of students who are in the final stage of their masters, for instance, or just finished university. I'm sure it's maybe 40% of all applications for pre-seed, but the rest really is people who are working on an idea next to their normal jobs, and they are thinking about starting their own business with this new idea. So it's really open. And where do they go next? Of course, we encourage them after pre-seed to apply also for seed financing. So this is the normal way, but most of the times, in parallel to seed financing, they also start with looking for investors. We also support them here and there, and only they need to look for the independence again of their companies, not to give too many shares. And this is also, I think, the good thing about our program, that you can hold on to more shares in this phase, and you don't need to give up too many shares too early.
Okay. Do we have questions at this stage from the participants? Otherwise, we can still come back after, of course, after Neshat shows the... Yeah, Thor, going.
I do have a question. Yes. So you mentioned that the success rate for application is below 10%, which actually is what I usually expect from these sorts of programs. Actually, I have two questions. So my question will be first, is there anything that these 10% are doing that really helps them to succeed? And also, on the other side, I would like to know if there's something that the 90% that are not making, if there's something that they are doing that also leads them to fail. Would you have any insights on this matter?
First of all, I'd say that we have already improved, like this was the success rate 2022, 2023 and 4, but then we changed. For instance, there we did not have this full-time commitment as a requirement. We included this, so we will see how it will affect the success rate. So this is maybe one aspect, but I think the impact first, so content-wise, impact first idea, that was something that many projects struggled with. They tried to say, okay, we have an idea, it will improve, it is, for instance, sharing platform for new, for used goods, but there are so many already. So what is really the added value of your new idea? Okay, so then they said, okay, we are only specializing in tools, for example, but they did not really see why there were so many initiatives that tried that already and failed. But you have to come up with something new in comparison to the existing ones. So I think to really know the market, to really know the competitors, why did other projects fail in this area, to go into depth, and not to be too convinced of yourself. This is something that many startups struggle with. And then when we say impact, of course, it was also a process to learn. For example, that we had many projects that said, okay, we improve for musicians, they are not remunerated enough for their music now in the times of digitalization. And then we needed to explain to them, of course, it is an impact, but it's not any of our impact areas, because it is economic improvement. And they said, now it's about diversity. But we said, now diversity is about, gender, age, disability. It's not about musicians in the business. So I can also understand that some things need to be explained a little bit better. It's not so easy to say societal added value and everybody knows what it means.
Okay, thank you, Neshat. Okay, so if we have no question right now, Neshat, maybe you can move to yes. showing your application files.
Yes. So I will start with the pitch deck, and I think this is also something that we work on a lot with the applicants during the process. We say that the pitch deck is like your entry card. Yeah, please make sure that all the core information will be displayed like in an instant. Don't make me think. We all need to understand the idea, the problem, the solution, the innovation, and then also how you're going to make money with it. Yeah. So I will just show you this slide. And then maybe this is something also where we have a lot of questions. They always ask us, but how can I explain now, for instance, my problem in one slide? That's just impossible. And then that is, of course, the beauty or the difficulty that they need to face. But it's always, there is a way. So the reduction of complexity of a problem, I think this is something that they really need to work on. And we always tell them that there is also this document business plan, that which I will show you later on. There you have a lot of space, like 25 pages. There you can go to the details. But here, like, show me in one slide the problem. I need to understand it. Also give like pictures, for instance. But of course, if there are teams that have nobody with some graphical skills, for instance, then I recommend to them also, please go find someone in your surrounding, somebody as a friend maybe. Because why? They sometimes we have some very technical experts for they're developing, I don't know, a drone for a certain wine area or something like that. And they are talking all about the technical details, but I tell them, you also need to promote your idea to be a successful entrepreneur. It's important to also know how to bring this into a pitch deck. Yeah, that they sometimes they don't not understand this need. Yeah, so this is something that we also teach them. Okay, so these are the slides that they need to work on. The project title, of course, that's not very difficult. We give them some questions, then sometimes they ask me, do I need to answer all of the questions? And we say, no, these are just to give you an idea what we need to learn here. But of course, we have so many different projects, so it depends, of course. So here, the problem definition, maybe what is also difficult for our projects is if they address, for instance, climate change, then the problem that they're addressing, they can explain it on a global scale, on a global level, and then try to explain the climate change altogether. But we say you can take it as given that we accept climate change as a problem, but now please come to the next level. Which problem are you addressing now on an individual level that then has the effect on climate change? So this is also a process. Sometimes they stay at this global level sometimes too long. Then the impact specific innovation. This is the challenge really. I will try to think of an example. I will come to that later. But then the USP, as I said before, really try to find competitors, even if they're indirect. Yeah, so we have a lot of, as I said, for instance, exchanging tools on a platform, and they say there's nothing like that. But then I say, okay, you can go to the next Obi we have here in Austria, or Hornbach. There are so many companies for tools. Then you can also rent there. How do you think it will affect your idea, or why do you think that people would go on your platform, and what could be the challenges here? Yeah, then also again to classify in one of our impact areas. Here, for example, there are things like they say we have an effect on unemployment. And then again, I need to tell them, I'm very sorry. It is, of course, a very important impact that you're addressing or problem that you're addressing, but unemployment is not really one of our areas again. So then if it is unemployment, but for example, in the health industry, then again, you can focus here, but then you need to show us how your problem will really solve the problem of too little staff, for example. So we have, there was one application, for example, it was about faster recruitment of doctors if you need a replacement. But then we asked them, okay, it is very nice to have a tool that you can have a faster recruitment, but if there are just too little people, there is no staff, how do you find them? It's not about improving the recruitment process. Does that really help? And then they needed to show us, yes, okay, there are in certain areas, there are for example, people in the last year of graduation in the medicine at a medical school, and then they can already be they can already fit in or fill in some certain tasks in the health system, for example. But how can you reach them? And does your tool really help to find them? So this is sometimes the process that we need to go with them and to develop and to help them find the real impact. Okay. The impact levels, I'm not sure if you know this. This is a little bit from the social enterprise area. Here we have different stages. What we want to show them also, like, please think about at which stage your project is located, what are the goals that you are aiming at, and what is the utmost goal. And then think about, are you really the right tool to provide to this goal? There was one example, for example, about financial literacy. So they said people lack financial literacy. There are many people who are who have financial problems. They do not know how to pay their debts, etc. And they started to develop a tool, like a game for children. And then it was a really innovative tool. I won't go much into details because of the, of course, I cannot tell you all the details, but the problem was they wanted to sell it at a price of 250 euro. So we said, now we have to think about who is your target group, who can you reach with a price of 250 euro, and who are the people who are in danger of financial problems. Normally, it's people with a low degree of literacy all overall in a lower social area. Can they afford 250 euro for a gadget for the children in order to improve their financial literacy? So this is sometimes what I wanted to give you also an example about the problem solution fit. You have a cool solution, you have a problem, but will this really solve the problem in the way that you are developing at the moment? And here you can also at these levels find the spot, and you need to evaluate your idea. The business model, here, cost and price structure, something that really people do not think about a lot. Unfortunately, of course, we have a lot of apps, we have a lot of platforms. There it's a little bit maybe easier. They all have a freemium model. But then again, we also have to check, like, okay, are people willing to pay? Are there, for example, many health apps? Yeah, there are so many also free apps. Are people really willing? If it's only 5, 6, 7 euro, will they pay? And then have you thought about, is it something that people only need 2 or 3 months, for example? Then what comes next? After 2 or 3 months, they will not subscribe your app anymore. How will you get new customers? So unfortunately, business model is something that that comes often last. If you're developing a new idea, and maybe it's a technical idea, then profit and price and cost structure is something that helps them. And this was your question in the beginning. Many of these slides really are things that are crucial for business success, but especially in the field of societal impact, sometimes it's just a very great idea, but unfortunately, if you don't think about profit, then you will not be a successful entrepreneur on the long run. Okay, market is clear, I guess. I will slide through it because I think the other document, the integral planning, will also be very helpful for you to see. Status quo and next step. This is something that is also important for our program modules, pre-seed and seed financing. Is the prototype already there or not? This is sometimes a question also difficult to be answered, because when is an application really ready? There's always some further development, but then really what are the core features that need to be given already? Okay, I think I will leave it to that, and I will show you now the integrated planning tool, because that was something that we changed a lot because we saw that it was very difficult for the projects to fill that in. Oh, but questions about the pitch deck first.
Just a quick one from my side, Neshat. Are they actually pitching then, the people? Are they coming to pitch, or are you just looking at the slides? How do you?
This pitch deck is for submission only. If they, in the first and second evaluation phase, if they are evaluated positively, then the third stage is a live hearing, and then they will pitch in front of an expert jury, but this will be another pitch deck. Because we say all the information provided to the jury will be studied by the jury members up front, and then they need to focus on a use case, which is also something that I recommend to them if the problem is not clear or the problem solution fit is not cannot be displayed clearly. We always recommend them show us the use case and the user journey. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Boris has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, tricky question, basically. So since you're saying that in the pitching, there is a, let's say, case that you said that sometimes the abonnents or those that are actually using some specific service and they are not willing to pay 250 or 7 euros and 5 euros, and they can go, I'm going to the time-wise, they use it once or 2 times only. So my question for you, how you are adopting your services, since I see this template, let's say, what's the follow-up for you to somehow get a grip on them, to go further on with them, not being literally used for only this case of the pitching and then it's done. So how you are you actually interested in being involved for a longer period of time to do this long-term cooperation with them, so you can follow them, you're kind of a coach or whatever for them, or also for the other stages, not only in the startup? Or how does it work for you? How you are developing new tools, introducing them to keep up the pace with these companies, let's say? I don't know, this is just about the business model that you're using, and I would like to know.
Mm-hmm. You mean as Austria Wirtschaftsservice, as a promotional bank? And yeah, so as I showed you in the first slides of my pitch or of my presentation, we try to really accompany the projects or the businesses from the first idea to really business success and expansion. So you're right, we try to fit in to the different stages. We have, for example, before pre-seed seed financing, there is an incubator, IaaS first incubator, that focuses on really early stage, like you have just the willingness to found a company, but you not even have the best idea yet, but maybe some, and then they give a lot of coaching, mentoring. So this is something that comes before. And then after pre-seed, there is seed financing. And then after that, we have the connecting services, for instance. We have that it's a matching tool. If they trying to find investors, they try to find investment partners or cooperation partners. They need focus groups, pilot customers, for instance. We try to help them there. But to be honest, the main focus is on financing. So also there are limits and limitations in terms of really giving them a little bit more. We would like them also to have more networking, for instance. That would already help many of the projects say, who are the others? We would like to connect with them. And then it's a little bit difficult for us in this role because our main goal is financing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Nishat. I'm just looking. Okay, I think you can move on, Nishat. Thank you.
Okay. So this is our integral planning sheet. I will zoom out a little bit so that you can see the whole, and then I will go into detail again. Okay, so the idea is if they want to fill that out, they say, okay, all the yellow fields need to be filled out, and then they say here, feature 1, and then they say, okay, I will work on that like here and here and here, and then I will be ready here, and so on. Okay, this is the idea of how to fill out this planning sheet. And then you come to the part where we have the costs, and then you say, okay, I need, I have like me, and then I work full time, and I will receive 5,000 euro, and so on. Okay, so just to give you an idea, the upper part is about what are you going to do, which activities and which goals are you going to achieve, and the lower part is about the costs. Okay, and then also it will give them an idea about their cash flow. This is something also which we receive often as a feedback. Thank you very much. I needed to think about my cash flow. I needed to think about my also my personnel resources. And then we also ask them, if you have a negative cash flow, then in 1 month, how you will cover that. Yeah, so these are things that really, I mean, they're essential, and our tools help them. This is really the feedback that we received, to plan and to think about the different important factors. Yeah. So about the content. This is something that we developed also further. Before, in the first template, we had only targets for milestone 2, and then there was a big yellow area, and they could think about, okay, which types of goals do I want to work on in the second milestone. Then we changed it, and we gave different topics, and we request the projects to formulate at least 1 goal in each area. This is something that also leads to failure sometimes, because they do not understand. They say, I'm just working on the prototype now. I only focus on, because I do not know if it is going to work or not. And I don't need to think about my company development. I don't need to think about marketing and sales. I will not focus on target group analysis and market segmentation. And this is, I think, also one of the greatest problems and leads to failure. If you're just developing your product and not thinking about including the target group, evaluating all the time, does my product fit the target group? Is there a market for that? And then also, of course, if I'm successful, because we don't require them to actually found the company during the pre-seed phase, because it's also allowed to fail. Okay, so they can also say it did not work out, so we will not actually found a company. But the goal should be, of course, to have a successful proof of concept in the end, and then to found the company, or if you already have a company, to think about the next steps in terms of further developing them. So I think this helped them a lot to say it is crucial really to have some progress in each and every one of these areas. And then sometimes they really struggle and they need to, this is something that we also allow them to work on after the first evaluation phase, okay? Because of course, if we do not see any impact, we do not see any innovation, we do not see any scalability, they will be declined after the first evaluation phase. But if the must-haves content-wise are successful, and rated positively, and there are some lacks in the integral planning, then we give them the chance to work on it again. But of course, if they only have one goal and it's just too little, then they will not get this chance. Then they will be declined, and they need to do it all over again. But if they're missing some aspects, then they have the chance to work on that, and then they sometimes, I think, for instance, impact measurement. There is one project, for example, they say we want to help forest owners to, with some innovative drones, to have an easier inventory and to find, for example, sick trees quicker. And then we say, okay, so this is your goal, but how will you measure your success rate in the end? If you're, how much, yes, this detection, how much better will it actually work? And what is your plan of checking this? Because we're an impact focused funding program. So of course, we want you also to check that, if you're actually receiving the impact and achieving the impact that you're aiming at. This is very tricky, very, very tricky. And then they need to think about, okay, how can I actually measure the outcome? Okay, so this is basically something for milestone 2 and milestone 3. It's the same, but then, of course, for the second half of the project duration. About costs. That's also very tricky, because then we have, of course, students just coming out of university. They don't want to put too much. Also, they say maybe only 2,000 euro. And then they have no clue whatsoever what's about their market value. And we always recommend them to give themselves also enough salary. Don't hesitate. This is something many women struggle with. They say, no, I don't want to pay too much for myself. I want to leave everything in the company. We say, okay, that is great, but you need to also be able to live from that, because we require full-time commitment. How will you live? Yeah. So they say, yeah, I have savings, but yeah, so we tell them between 4,000 and 6,500 euro is something that is a range that is plausible for us. But then in this, for this aspect, many need to talk to a tax consultant for the first time, because we tell them for pre-seed, as soon as you receive our funding, you are a sole proprietorship, at least in the beginning. So you need to think about taxes, about your insurance, etc. Everything is up to you then. and you need to figure that out. And we are not the consultants in this area. Please find out, now that you're going to found a company, what are the also financial aspects that you have to consider for yourself. Yeah, so this is, I think, something that also educates them somehow. Okay, just brief last words about the business plan, because we had a lot of discussions about that. I just want to show you also maybe just the first page to show you what are we going to ask them. So this is the template of the business plan. There was a great discussion, as you might know. Business plans, many people say that's something that is from the past. We don't need any business plans anymore. Then we're discussing whether or not to call it business plan. Maybe it's just a project description. You know, business model canvas is the new business plan. You don't just need one sheet, and that is all right. But again, if, for example, I think about market size and growth, or target groups and market share, a competitive analysis, that are things I have also received the feedback again that many thought about those areas for the first time when they needed to write the business plan for our funding program. And it is crucial again, and it's not something that's just a piece of paper and nobody looks at during the application process. But many times, as I said, the pitch deck is really just the essentials, and we do look up the details then in the business plan. And of course, one thing is maybe the financial planning, which the revenue plan. And of course, this is just a good guess, but what we tell them there is, we want to learn how you think. How big do you think? Are you planning like just a few €1,000 in 3 years, or are you planning like 5 million? I mean, that shows us like the scale, not of course the real scenario, but we want to see that how ambitious are you or not. This is something that is the key learning that we take out from the financial planning, for instance. So we still have this business plan with this template, and we think that it's still useful both for our applicants, but also for us in the evaluation process. Okay, so that's from my side. I will stop the sharing, and I hope that you received a good idea, a good overall from our funding program, and also the evaluation process, and what we require from the applicants, and how we help them also with these documents to get funding ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Neshat. I think it was quite clear. A quick practical question: as you made the effort to translate those documents, can you also provide us the translated versions, or is that fine?
Yes, I think Stefan, my colleague, has also received the translations, and we will send them to you then afterwards.
So we don't have each of us to download them from your website and do the same. And I was happy to hear about DeepL, because it's a German unicorn in between. I think it seems everybody on the world is using DeepL for translation.
Yes.
We have 2-3 minutes just for 1 or 2 quick questions at the end for Neshat. But as for Marius, Stefan and Christina are available and could give questions forward to Neshat if needed. No urgent question. No. But
no
thank you, Neshat.
Maybe just a comment.
Yes, correct.
I find it very attractive that we have the similar tools, let's say these business plans and the templates in the Excel sheet. We use this very similar ones that we were provided by Spirit Agency in Slovenia, which is national, I would say, ecosystemic actor from the Ministry of the Economy. And the tools are pretty much the same. We already used them in 2005 when I started started to work with the companies directly, but yet we are still working with these same tools like you are saying, and sometimes we use the Canvas as a template, let's say, if somebody wants, but in general, yeah, we have the similar stuff and still working. So I'm very pleased about that fact.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We also like there is this deep tech, our sister program. They already exist for 25 years, and also they use these sheets. But it's sometimes the little changes. It's not like the whole sheet. But for instance, in the pitch deck, we really thought about including one page about this use case, because people talk about overall idea, but okay, what does really the user, the customer, where stands he now? What does he need to do? Like that, this could be really the next improvement for our pitch deck, or these types of areas that they really need to think about the target group and the pricing and how to include them in the process. It's the little changes that really have also here a real improvement, but I also think you don't need to invent the whole system completely from the beginning. Interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Maybe just one quick last question coming from actually AWS from Christina. What is the ratio of companies fulfilling the conditions of the gender bonus, roughly?
It changes throughout the time, but I think the last time it was 40% actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but it changes to be.
Yeah,
so I think between between
but it's
30
not like
and 40%.
between 0 and 5 or something like this. It's,
no,
it's much higher. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just I'm looking at the screen. No hands raised anymore right now. Probably there would be question coming up, but yeah. Okay, then Neshat, also to you, a big thank you. It was really interesting, and also the dive into the practical files which you are using, so it can help us comfort ourselves if we use similar, or maybe give us some new ideas. Thanks a lot for that, and
thanks for having me, and yeah, all the best for the rest of the sessions. Bye bye.
Thank you, Neshat. Bye bye.
Bye.
Very good. So we will go into another part of this funding process. We've heard that a few times about pitching and so on. Thor, so no, it's your unique chance to show us.
Now it's my turn. You guys will soon see that my presentation is the child of the first session, the second session. You're gonna see the child which is my presentation, because there's a lot of overlap between the topics. So just look, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
It works. It's in presentation mode, and we can hear you, so it seems to work fine.
Okay. If I switch slides, did they also? Because last time I had a problem with slide switching.
Yeah, it works. It works.
Slide switching. Okay, great. So hi everyone. My name is Thor Rodrigues. I work as an innovation manager for Atrineo AG, and for the next 45 minutes, I'll be talking about two main topics: investor engagement and investor pitching. So the first part, the investor engagement, I'm going to talk about first why it actually matters. We're going to talk about the non-obvious benefits of engaging with investors. Then we're going to talk about the major difficulties that we see that often happens between the communication from potential applicants and those interested in attracting the attention of investors and investing themselves. And finally, we're going to talk about the strategies and best practices that founders, principal investigators, but also institutions that support startup engagement, what are the best practices that they can do to bridge the gap between the researchers and the investors. So an important thing about Atrineo to begin with is that we are a company focused on knowledge and technology transfer, mostly directly towards public institutions. So a good core chunk of our clients are directly universities, research institutes, and often people that come from academia. And we notice that, especially with technologies, there's many different difficulties that happen to hinder the communication between both parties. Because usually people from research and academia, they have very oriented towards one type of worldview, one type of vision, and when it comes to investors, things happen to be completely different, and that often leads to many struggles and difficulties. And we're going to share insights not only into what we would suggest to support someone that just want to start their spin off for the company, but specifically when they come from a scientific or academic background. So first, I'd like to talk about the 4 main benefits of actually engaging with investors. The first one I think is quite obvious, which is the acquisition of funding and resources. So, well, if you want to have a successful company, you're going to need a source of capital to be able to keep funding your activities, and that is the main benefit actually talking with investors they have, because they allow you to acquire funding resources, and you can use the funding resources to not only maintain your operations but scale up. You hire new people, acquire the equipment and the materials required for your company to keep on going. So that is clearly, and also if you run out of money, it's a game over for you. So obviously that is the most important factor. But there's also 3 sometimes not very obvious benefits that are also very important. So especially when it comes to investors directly, venture capital, they often come with a lot of baggage when it comes to business expertise and inside knowledge about how not only business but also specific industries they work. Often the people that work for venture capital boards, they are former investors or they're former startup owners, so they know a lot about the difficulties because they've been to this path. And especially if you come from maybe an academic setting, you are highly inexperienced about understanding how to actually set up your business, the different complexities of having to manage your organization, the different challenges. And it's often, especially if you're in academic context, it's difficult to find people that can help you, because often academics are very into their own research. So it's a very good benefit that you can have your investors that can support you, and it can act as a source of expertise. It's someone that can support you on different challenges. Since they've already done that, they can easily identify maybe treasures or traps that you can go into, do lack of experience, and they can support you into avoiding those. Often that can lead into you avoiding making very costly mistakes. And also they also serve as a entry door for you to expanding your networking opportunities. And also they will also introduce you to new business opportunities, often with the investors and VC funding, because they also have a direct interest in your startup succeeding, so they can recoup their investments. They want to make sure that you're in the best position, you have the best connections in order to do so. So because VC, they are in this very interconnected environment, they open the opportunities for you to get to know people in other institutions that are similar to what you're doing, or maybe where there's potential synergies. They can introduce you to potential business partners or potential clients. They can show you to new environments and new locations in which you can later secure even additional funding or marketing opportunities so you can display your technology, you can talk about your company. So that is a very good benefit that the investor engagement can also lead you to have. And finally is from a more abstract perspective, but it's also about mentorship and accountability, because often when you take someone else's money specifically, sometimes you do take public funding, but when you're talking about private investment, you are getting money from someone that often instills a sense of accountability and structure to people. You're getting a good chunk of money so you can work on your own company from someone else, and you want to feel like you want to make your best out of the money that you're getting. So you become much more structured, you become more disciplined with your activities. And often when you're just by yourself or by your initial founder groups, it's a bit harder to have that because you feel like there's no external sort of pressure for you to do. Sometimes, especially researchers, they feel like they can just go into their own pace. They can take their time to develop the different things they want to, and that's often not compatible with you trying to scale up your company, because often you don't have that much time for you to actually grow. So it's good, this external mentorship and accountability puts you on the right tracks. It helps you to structure, it helps you to move fast, it helps you to give this sense of urgency, the sense of accountability. So these are, even though the first one, the funding resources is a bit obvious, I think these 3 additional benefits, they can greatly improve your odds of succeeding if you have a direct connection with your investors. And now I would like to talk a bit about why investor engagement matters now way more than it used to do before. So
Of course, it always did matter, but now there's a big resurgence of that, and especially for public institutions, also research groups. You see that there's a novel dynamics that now happens between public and private organizations. This happens especially because now large institutions, large universities, they really want to focus into showcasing that they can transfer what they're actually doing with public funding into actual new companies and actual new technologies. And that is, it seems that it's a new goalpost for how institutions compare against one another. Traditionally speaking, that used to be in papers. So in institutions, universities, you have two universities. How would you know which one is the best? Very traditional, like in the 70s and also in the 80s, they would look up scientific production. So they would see how many published papers institution have, how many, which of those are going to large, big journals, how many top researchers these institutions have, what is the impact of the research. That used to be the metrics of how you would compare institutions with one another. And then in the 90s, that's and early 2000s, that slowly started to change into patents. So there was a massive focus on patenting. People came to the realization that, okay, you can have an institution that can publish a lot of papers, and at the end, you just have an institution with a lot of papers that doesn't really translate to everything. At the same time, because often public institutions get money from public funding, there's the whole chain of all the way into the political sphere that they're like, oh, we want to show that we're actually doing something useful with all the money that we're giving to you. We give institutions millions, if not billions every year, and all you guys are doing is publishing papers. So this the goalpost slowly changed from just showing your research to actually having patents, because patent, once again, it's easy for you to quantify, oh, we have a new technology and it became a patent. For the research, it was good because it can say, look, my research is actually fruitful. We're actually getting to novel things that we can solidify in this patent format. For the university, it was also very good because they can say, look, our researchers are very innovative. We have X many patents on these areas, and that's good for us. And once again, these are also very good and easy to compare. So you can just look at your university and see which one has more patents, and you would assume, and that's often misleading, but that's what happens. You can assume, oh, because this university has more patents, they are more engaging. And now the current goalpost is, because once people came to the realization that, okay, you can have a lot of patents, but it doesn't translate into commercialization, because many universities, especially in Germany, they have hundreds, some institutions even have thousands of different patents, but their actual transfer rate is very, very low. We know this because Atrineo exists especially to support universities and research institutes to help transfer their patents into actual applications. So if that wasn't a problem, we wouldn't be existent, and we definitely not short on the list of clients. So that's definitely like a big issue. And now in the last 10 years or so, let's say just starting from 2010s all the way to now the present, the goalpost changed once again to the number of spin-offs and startups that you have, because there you have a more direct correlation between, look, this is the money that was invested directly to develop the initial institution, to develop the research, and then you can see this being translated into a company and generating profit and expanding, getting customers, serving clients. So that is the current paradigm, especially in, I would say mostly not over Europe, but especially in Germany. You see that all the main governmental hubs and universities, they're really trying to shift into, look, we need to make sure that our institutions were able to produce more startups, to produce more spin-offs, to support the different researchers that we have, to transfer all this technology that we're working on. So that is it's a macro trend, but it's the novel dynamics that you have between public and private organizations, and that is really pushing the wave of, we need to focus into attaining investors and engaging them so we can grow up the companies that we're working on. That is one micro trend. The second very important point is that, private investment gets you an additional funding source. So your money, your bank for your cash flow is the most important thing that it's going to dictate if your spin-off is going to survive or if it's going to die. And if you work in academia, you're often strict into public funding. And then especially a lot of research grants, they are way more research oriented than actual application oriented. So that can be constraints because now you have to divide your daytime with not only managing your spin-off, your startup, but also with attending different requirements for your research project. And that's not ideal. And then once you start engaging with private investors, you have now a new additional funding source that can be very useful to give like an overlife to your institution. And then finally, the actual what are the benefits of this for you as a researcher and for your institution, but also society as a whole. Like, why should specifically public, often a lot of public money goes into these initiatives? Why would this be the case? Why is this important? Why is it a good application of money? And that is because it's another way of you bridging the gap between your research that you're performing in academia and then the societal impact when you actually manage to successfully transfer what you're doing with the next application. So you leave academia and you actually do something with the thing that you spend years and years researching. So these are the three major points about why investor engagement actually matters in a general sense. And then you can clearly see this if you examine capital investment, specifically for European startups. So this is the graph from the State of European Tech, which was a collaboration study done with Crunchbase, DealRoom, and Atomico. And they demonstrate that specifically since 2020, there's been a major surge in capital that has been directly invested in European startups. You can explain the 2021 surge to different macroeconomic changes. This reflects, we're not going to go much into this, but specifically reflects the changes in the interest rates in the United States government, and then lending money became very cheap. So a lot of banks were giving a lot of money very aggressively to different startup ventures. But even though this is normally mostly equalized by now, you can still see that the pre-2021 I mean, the post-2021 rates are higher than the pre-2021 rates, because you still have this trend of like there is definitely perceived value in business opportunities into you adding money into these startups, and then they grow, and then later on you as an investor, you can recoup your investment. You can sell the shares that you have, and then you can make more money, and then you can keep the wheel spinning by investing once again into new startups. So you definitely see this trend. And yep, we expect that this is going to be continuing in a stable, if not upwards trend in the future. Well, the future will tell us, we'll see. But so far, things seems to be going in a good direction. And now I'd like to talk a bit about the major problems that we perceive, especially when we help a lot of different researchers and PIs, into the main issues that they do have when they try to establish these relationships with the investors. It's important for us to know, because you need to know what the problems that you have so you can actually find out solutions for them. So the major one would say is the mismatch between expectations and timelines that the researchers and academic people have. So often in academia, you have processes they take considerably much longer. You have longer time, you have your research time, you have to do different experiments, and then there's review. You do over and over research, you read more papers, you improve your research question over and over. These things, they can be very time consuming. Usually PhD programs, they last 4 years because you're doing 4 years, your whole research. And even though at the end, researchers and PIs, PhDs, they always complain that it's just, they don't have enough time. This is an insanely long time when you come from the perspective of an investor, because for investor dynamics and startup dynamics, things are much faster. Usually 1 year is a very long time. Most initial companies, they don't have 1 year worth of funding of operations. So if they're not able to in 1 year be able to develop their product solution, attract customers, and have enough revenue to at least pay their expenses and their loans, then they're dead in the water. So there's often this gap between investors always coming to research and saying, hey, you guys need to work faster, you guys need to do these things faster and faster and faster. And at the same time, researchers, they're always like, but there's just not enough time. I need more time to validate my results. I need more time to do this. I need more time to do that. I don't feel like it's ready. I need to extend deadlines. That's often one major conflict point that ends up halting or just undermining potential cooperations among them. The second would be once again, the communication challenges. So these two groups, like, use very specific languages for different contexts. And once again, researchers, they're often very focused on their research questions, but also all the complexities they are surrounded around it. It seems like it's like a good stamp of your well knowledge. You work on something that is very complex and something very difficult, and they try so often, for better for worse, you see a lot of researchers try to make their questions, their things, to be super complicated, so they can see, look, we're actually doing something very difficult here, and we're very smart people, and that's why everything takes so long. But at the same time, on the investor side, they want exactly the opposite. They want, look, we want things to be direct and clear, and you need to show us very clearly the problem and very clearly how you're going to solve it. And the less is usually more. So There's many different quirks and barriers on this area. Third point would be the lack of business and commercialization skills. So yes, once again, researchers, unless they come from business or economic schools, they don't know exactly, okay, I have my research now. Now, what do I do? How do I sell this? How do I start my company? How do I protect the thing that I'm actually working on? It's insanely terrible to see the amount of times that researchers that have very complex and forward-looking new developments, and then instead of protecting it with the intellectual property, instead of patenting or just keeping like as a trade secret the copyrights, they just publish all the research that they have. And once you do this, you can no longer patent what you have. So you just gave up all your past couple of years of research for free just to put in a publication or in a seminar. So there's also this massive bridge between, you know, how do you actually, from the idea to the actual commercialization. Again, issue with the limited networks and access to investors. So researchers, they're very into their own niche, academia niche, and they don't know how to bridge the gap of, okay, now how do I go and talk to an investor? How do I find people that want to finance me? How do I convince these people to finance me? How do I even get to talk with these people? Like, where can I find this type of investor that I'm looking for? And then finally is the risk differentiation. So once again, investors, they assess the risk on, well, financial performance of the product or the market validation on scalability. And at the same time, researchers are interested into, well, let's see how the thing that I'm working on, if it's scientifically feasible. They want to focus more on the experiments they're actually doing. And then there's a massive mismatch. They represent the 5 major obstacles that often hinder further relationships between researchers, PIs, and investors to flourish. And then now that we understand this, we're going to go into what actually can be done to help us bridge the gap. So first thing that would highly recommend is to further, and that's actually something that we're doing here right now, but further intensify entrepreneurial training for researchers. So it will be very wise, and this is often what happens here in Germany. We have different research institutes, Jülich Forschungszentrum, the Helmholtz Center, Max Planck. Often when they have new PhD classes, what they do is they have specific seminars, specific training sessions, just so they explain, in which business people come and they explain, look, the business fundamentals, but also fundamentals for research. Further, we're explaining important communication skills that one should have with investors. We explain the core knowledge that one should have about market validation skills, about intellectual property, how to protect your IP, all these different things. This is a very specific work that Atrineo does with the aforementioned institutions. So it's definitely like a very important thing to explain this to actual upcoming researchers. Second would be to develop these supporting programs and structures for investment readiness. So not only you want to have the training part that you made it available to the people that work in your institution, but also you want to make sure that you have specific programs and structures in case different offices or physical locations. And these programs, they're able to offer all this wide range of services that support the further engagement between research and investors. And 2 key important structures are the accelerators and incubators. So these are locations that pretty much they support pre-seed spin-offs and startups to actually get going and grow up, and it's help structure their companies. And then would be the mentorship program. So usually you have experienced entrepreneurs and you offer them, or they do some exchange in which they're part of the board of a upcoming spin-off startup, or they offer their mentorship and their best practices, and they share what one should do given your business scenario. And then finally, especially for universities, you should also focus a lot on technology transfer offices, which is, it's a type of structure, but pretty much TTO offices, they provide a wide range of services from commercialization support all the way to helping technologists to navigate patent licensing, establishing a company, all the legal and bureaucratical requirements that need to be done for you to be able to create your spin-off. Not only that, TTOs should also actively work towards creating a good network for your investors to be able to reach easily different funding strategies, different funding programs, and different funding partners. And not only that, usually you should also offer legal and financial services, so you can support the scientists, the founders with different endeavors that they have. So these are the 3 main mitigation strategies that we highly recommend that should be done to be able to mediate the problems of bridging the gap between the researchers and the principals. And then, as you can see here, this is a quick comparison matrix of the 5 main issues, and then the different mitigation strategies and which of the institutions are better fit for solving them. So entrepreneurial and training for researchers, they're very good with the mismatching expectations, with the communication challenges, with the lack of business and transfer skills, and finally with explain the differences in risk perception and evaluation. The supporting programs for investment readiness, they're good with the lack of solving the problem of lack of business and transfer skills, and also limited network and access to investors. And finally, the TTO offices, they can support you in pretty much all the spectrum of the problems that we perceive. And then finally, we talk briefly about some best practices for founders, but also for the support institutions. So say that if you are a founder and you want to improve your odds of having good engagement with investors, first thing would be make sure that you align your vision directly with what you want to do and what the investor is expecting you to do. This vision thing is often very difficult because, like, again, often they use different sets of communications to talk with another. Researchers are often oriented into, I want to make sure that my research goes on and flourish so I can do more research. And investors often like, no, I want to make sure that you know what you're doing and how you're going to make this into a viable business, a viable product, how to scale this up, and then how we're going to make money out of this. So make sure that you're aligned on the vision, make sure that you're talking the same terms. The second would be to definitely maintain very transparent communication. So for you, from a founder perspective, you want to you should be as genuine and as open about your communications, not only the good positive aspects of what you're doing, but also the shortcomings that often happens when you're trying to move on with your business. And ideally, you want to be extremely open with the investors that you're doing in this. So regular, clear, and direct communications are very good. Also, these people are giving you money so you can work. So you know you have this sense of accountability towards them. And also, it's important because it shows your commitment, it shows that you take it seriously. And then later, if for any reason you need further funding, it's already sets a good precedence, already sets a good image for you in the eyes of the investor that you have. Third would be to set clear expectations of your milestones, what you're trying to reach, what you're trying to expect, or your expectations, where you want to go, and give actual clear and objective and grounded, reasonable milestones for when you want to reach the milestones that you set to reach. That's also very important. I know sometimes it's easy to try to sell yourself a bit more than you actually are, but it's important to set expectation clear. You're going to avoid a lot of headache and confusion and misunderstandings in the future. So be double, triple clear about your expectations, what you want to achieve. And finally, definitely leverage their expertise. Once again, these the venture investors, they want your company to succeed as much as you want because their money is in it. They already trust you to begin with, so they give you money for that. And they definitely like a very important tool that you can leverage. Often when it's your first time setting up like an actual business, things are extremely complicated, and you're often not going to know how to do a lot of things. And then it's much, instead of just spending your whole day researching or looking into how to do something, just reach out to them on a regular basis, and then come up and say, look, this is a problem that I have. I wonder if you've been in a similar situation like this one before. And if you did, would you just suggest me to overcome this? And yeah, and they will help you because once said again, they want you to succeed as much as you want to succeed because you both win. So yeah, that's definitely the 4 very good best practices that you as a founder or principal investigator that wants to start your company, you should definitely follow. And then from the part of the support institution, so now you are neither the investor nor the principal founder. You are the in-between institution that helps, supporting and making sure that the people that you serve under, so the founders, they actually get going. A couple sets of best practices for your TTO office or your accelerator incubator, that would be: first, identify and target the ambitious entrepreneurs, but also just prominent people and prospective-looking people in your institution. Often you say, "Oh, I'm just going to start my TTO office," and then people are naturally and they're just by default going to know exactly what I do, how I can help them, and they're just going to come to me, and I don't have to do anything. That often doesn't happen. So you need to proactively kind of advertise within your own institution. Look, we have the institution. This is what we do. This is a service that we offer. This is how we can help you. This is the problems that you might face, and this is what we can do to actually solve the problems that you have. So be direct and be active and be engaged, and actually, reach out to the people institution, figure out who's doing what, who's who within the institution that you work for, and then once you identify them, you can even try to coach your own scientists and say, look, we see that you guys are doing research in this area. Have you ever considered maybe commercialization? Have you ever considered maybe transfer? These things, they often go unnoticed because once again, researchers, they focus on just doing their papers and writing the publications, and they either assume that, sometimes they assume someone will come to them, so they just don't move. And since you work there, maybe, yeah, it's good if you do that. So you can just directly go and say, look, we're interested. We're seeing that what you're doing here sounds very interesting. And then maybe there's a good couple opportunities here. So we'd like to progress this further. Second would be to provide tailored mentoring and support. So it's easy to just give like a one-fit solutions all for everybody, but often these cases are very specific, like different companies, different spin-offs, they're working on different challenges. So it's good for you to see and understand, okay, on this case, which are the major problems that these groups face and how we can support them. And then the group B is going to have a different set of problems. And then you figure out, okay, what are the best things that I can actually offer to them? And often these things are like ad hoc. So it depends a lot on the situation. So it's important for your institution to be relatively flexible into understanding how, and also provide a wide range of services so you can better adequate the needs of the people that are under your tutelage. Third would be to facilitate access to finance. And it comes not only you directly giving money to them, but also you as an institution, you can act as an intermediary so you can help them find different programs, either within your national territory or within the European context of different funding opportunities, different funding programs, either public or private sources that you can, these founders under your umbrella, they can later use to, apply so they can potentially get further additional funding or any other sort of benefits. So that's important for you as the TTO officer of a institution to have that very clear in your mind. 4.2, to foster the innovation ecosystem. And what does that actually mean? Events and networking are very important parts of the whole transfer process, because that's like an important part of the commercialization part. Investors, they're looking for all these important, interesting events that usually have this pitch presentation or this a group of an event in which scientists or the researchers from the institution, they can showcase different developments. And then your job as a TTO office would be support these events, send out invitations for prospective groups of investors, try to poach these people and say, look, it goes further than just send the emails saying, look, our institution is doing this and that, but really try to be active, really try to identify who are the key people in your region that can provide additional funding, provide additional financing opportunities, and then actively reached out to them, say, look, we have this 5 most prominent technologies in our institution, and we think this might be an interesting opportunity for you. Would you like to come over? We can set up a meeting with the founders. We can set up an event so you can come and see. We can do an open visitation of our facilities so you can have a good idea of what we're actually doing. And if you see there any opportunities there, that is good practices for you to actually engage and to create this innovation ecosystem. And then finally, to promote best practices for investor engagement, which goes all the way back to, have these training sessions, make sure that the people under your institution, once they start actually developing new research and technologies, you go up and say, look, okay, now you guys need to have specific training on the basics for marketing, the basics for protecting your intellectual property, all these things. So these are 5 very important pillars that we generally recommend for the support institutions. And yeah, that's pretty much the core and teach that we have, at least on this part, on investor engagement. Now I have just a quick question part for the first part. So would anyone have any direct question regarding to this part of the presentation? Ruth?
Not really a question, but maybe a comment. Basically, this is a very good input, since we are lately developing this venture studio stuff, which is based on spin-offs. And we are kind of hiring more and more of the PhDs from, let's say, different topics, but sometimes there's a deep tech involved, and we would like to somehow involve a lot of them to our, I would say, business models, which include this venture studio where we would like to be investors in their endeavors. And that's actually pretty well defined if you go for the perspective of the both sides, actually, those spin-offers and on the other side, investors. So this is kind of a, I would say, book or instructions for us to go through and basically address some topics that are still not properly addressed by our institution, but it's a very good input for us. So I just wanted to say this. Thank you.
That is great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyone else? I guess not. Okay, good. Then that's the part for investor engagement. Talk about why it matters, major challenges, and also if you, from the perspective of founder, what to do, and from the perspective of TTO, what to do. And now we're gonna go a bit into investor pitching. A lot of the topics that Nisha previously mentioned are also gonna be mentioned here, but I'll try to make this dynamic and engage enough in a in the correct way. One second. Okay, so pretty much the idea behind an investor pitching. So what's the core idea behind the pitching? So you're gonna go to someone, you're gonna say, look, actually, I'm trying to do something that requires a lot of money, and I want you to give me money, and I'm gonna explain to you why it matters and why you should give money to me. Normally, a normal pitch would be divided into these seven main parts. So the first would be the introduction. So you start by just actually grabbing their attention. You do like a bold statement, engaging question, and then you go talking to the problem. The problem, the solution, and the call to action are by far the most important parts that you actually need to present. So you actually, get someone's attention, but also then keep going on. If an investor is paying attention to you, that's the most important things that they want to know. They want to know, okay, what's the problem? What are you trying to actually solve me? Why should I care about this thing? Is it even actually a problem that you're trying to solve? Then the solution of, okay, now that I know what the problem is, I want to know exactly how you're going to solve this and why the way you're solving is important or unique or special, and why should I pay attention to that? And then you have in between points, and then but then finally the call to action, which is, okay, now that you told me the problem and you told me your proposed solution for that, what do you want me to do? So in between, I mean, it depends a lot on and then later we're also going to talk about the different formats and the different sizes of pitch presentations. But first, we're going to start with the most default one, which is a pitch deck presentation. So pitch deck presentation usually is 10 to 20, sometimes even 30 minutes presentation here in front of an audience, and then you pretty much cover the most important parts of your business model, of your business proposal. So you start with the introduction, and then you move into the problem part of what is the problem, what the problem there is. Then you move into the solution of how you or your group are going to solve the solution that you have to. Then you usually have an in-between part about the description about the market. So you talk in depth about, okay, so this is the market that we have. You talk about your milestones, talk about the attractions, talk about different points directly related to market. Then you move into your business model. So how you're going to structure your operations, what is your milestones, how you're going to get from where you are into where you want to be, how you're going to make sure that all the things that you're doing are actually going to work. You talk a bit about the founder team, because people are, when they invest, they often don't invest in the idea itself. They mostly invest in the team behind it. So it's also important to highlight your team. And then finally, the call to action of what you expect me to do. And then I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into each of these parts. So first, the introduction. Ideally, when you say like introduction is, you talk like the name of your company or your project. If you don't have a name, just find something, and then write a very clear and objective description of actually what you're doing. And exactly is what it means, like a description. Don't write a nice marketing tagline. Don't write the team of your company. Write exactly what you're doing. I don't know. Let's say you have you develop a new recycling solution that involves coffee beans. So you have a better technology of developing of recycling coffee beans, maybe to do something else. Then you say, look, we are at a coffee addicts something, you company name, and then you say, we help efficiently recycle coffee beans. That's it. You directly say what you want. That is because that's the first glimpse of what you want, and then you want to get their attention. You want to say, look, this is actually what we're doing, and then next. Depending on the type of your company that you have, so if you're super start on, you're not going to have a attractionist teaser because you're still super early on, so you don't have that much to talk about. But if you're doing a pitch maybe for your seed A, not seed A, so your round A or round B, then you should already have some numbers about things that you achieve, and that's just good because it's very eye-catching. You can say, look, this is the amount of users that we have, or this is how many products that was sold in the last quarter, or this is the amount of investment that we already attracted. This is our future prognosis. It's good to just, for one brief second, you don't want to delve too much into it, but to just show a bit this high relevant numbers because it helps attract attention, it helps make sure that people are awake and paying attention to what you're going to talk. And then you move into the problem. So I think this is often where a lot of mistakes happen. You want to make it very clear that the problem that you're trying to solve is there. Explain the problem, be super straightforward, don't be ambiguous, be direct. The less you write is more. Explain the problem, explain why the problem matters, who the problem matters to, what's important to, and yeah, focus on the 4 common questions. What is the situation in the market? What is the actual problem you're solving? Who are you solving this problem for? And then finally, what are the opportunities for you solving the problems, or these 4 main points. And then you start working for, okay, so for example, even though you can use visual charts or data, often images or impactful resources that can be very useful for actually getting some sort of engagement from your audience. So you can just have the data that says in Germany, approximately 11 million tons of food are wasted every year. You can just put that as a data element, but you can also just show an actual picture that some sort of elicits some sort of emotional response from the audience, and it also helps people to clearly understand what you're talking about. Talking about like massive amounts of food waste that happens every year. And once people understand the problem, you prime them into talking about the solution. So what you're gonna do to actually solve this, and we recommend you following the 3 what's structure. So you're gonna talk about what is the goal of the solution that you're trying to do. You want to talk about your unique selling point of what makes your idea new or innovative. So, what are we doing that is different from everybody else, and how we can position this in a unique manner that this is our own solution is more special, different than what other people are doing. So that is a key important point for you to say, and say it in a very clear manner. This is what we want to do. This is our solution, and this is why our solution is new, because no one is doing it, because it's a new way, or because it's a new strategy that no one else seems to be trying. And this is what is unique about us. Those, even often you get into markets that, the first one trying to solve a problem that exists, but then you can propose yourself, say, look, we are offering a unique perspective of, even though people already tried to solve this, the way we're doing is different, and that's why you should trust us. It's maybe not even about like when you have new technology, maybe just have a new process. So we know how to do this more efficiently. We found a better way to do this. We found a way that we can solve this issue, and that avoids all the problems that other groups that tried it are having, and that's why we're going to succeed. So you should be very clear about the solution that you're offering. These are the problem and the solution are the most important parts, and you want to be as clear as possible and direct as possible about what you're doing. And then you come on into more dense parts. So you should have definitely a part about the market validation sizing. So the idea behind this, you want to explain, look, we have a problem, we have the solution, but now I want to tell you, look, the solution that we're going to offer is also scalable, because we actually have a market for this. And that's where you actually go and explain, look, this is the total market size of the application that we're working on. and this market is expected to, then you can also look for different market trends. You can say, look, we see there's a trend of this market is expecting to grow from this region, or we see that this market consumer is going to mature here, so this is what we're tackling this problem. These are existing trends or macro trends. They are leading to this thing to be more and more important. It's important for you to have the complete overview of not only what you're doing, but also like the market around the application you're working on, so you can use this as a leverage. So you can say, look, this is actually a big market that we're working on, and that's why it's important for you to explain. Then you just keep them a couple points. So there's 43 million potential customers for the things that we're working on. We have a 60% growth on this market segment in the past 5 years. These things are important, so because they also help you to support the idea of like, look, the thing that we're actually working on, it's meaningful, it is impactful, it's important. And then you go into talking about the target audience. So who are you actually selling this to? And then usually, well, we have workshops just on market segmentation and identifying the core audience, identifying the core market for what you want to sell. And then often a good rule of thumb advice I would say is you want to know very clearly, you want to pinpoint with exact precision who your final market is going to be. And it's often very easy to say, oh yeah, I'm working on the coffee recycle product, so everybody that wants to recycle, everybody that drinks coffee is the market for us. That is easy and wrong way of actually doing this, because just everybody that drinks coffee is a market that it sounds very insightful, but not really. You're just shooting everywhere. And then also you often lose the nuance of what you're actually doing. So let's say you found a new way of recycle coffee beans. They are disposed after being processed. Then you can say, for example, okay, our target core audience are the facilities that collect and recycle bio-waste, specifically in settings for small and medium-sized municipalities or districts. And that is first, you're going to show that you're much more aware of what you're actually doing, who your target audience is. It's also good for you because at the end, you're going to have to sell this to people. So you want to maximize putting your efforts into the people you actually want to sell this to, which are the product is a better fit for, and avoid those that are not. And once again, it's good to show, look, to your investor, look, I came and I did my research. I actually know what I'm doing. I'm not just shooting everywhere. I'm going to make something that I'm going to hope someone realizes it's good to use. So I'm actually know exactly who's my target audience for this product is. So it's very good for you to talk about the target customer. And then you want to briefly talk about your competitors, not only because you want to know who's for most things, they're almost always someone in the block, someone already trying to do something similar than what you're doing. If not, that is actually a very negative red flag, because then you're going to have to explain, okay, why am I doing something that no one else seems to be doing? Because sometimes you're going to come up with the very uncomfortable answer to that, because what you're doing is not market profitable, or it doesn't make sense from a business perspective. So it's very important to understand if no one else is trying to do what I'm trying to do, why not? Maybe you came up with a very innovative solution that no one ever thought about, but that's fairly and extremely unlikely. And then it's important for you to have a competitive view, because not only it helps you to understand more or less how your solution compares to the solutions of our competitors, where you can find, but also understands you to find where you have your own competitive edge. So, we are a smaller company, so we're not able to compete in price of equipment with larger companies, but maybe we can be very nimble, and we can very easily and directly talk with the different clients they are in the recycling business. So we can go directly to them. We can understand that maybe we can offer them a custom solution for the exact problem that they have that works better with the infrastructure that they already have. That would be one example. So it's important for you to understand your strong points, but also the strong points of our competitors, and then you can figure out, okay, I cannot compete on price, or I cannot compete on scale, or I cannot compete on these things. But since I'm small, nimble, there are other benefits that I can offer to my clients that add more value to my clients, or maybe because of this, I see there's underserved niche in the market. So the large companies, they're also in the bio-waste recycling. They mostly focus on large cities or large enterprise customers, and then you have a lot of these underserved regions that they have a small recycling center, but they're not big and scale enough to be able to justify all the costs. So maybe this is going to be my core target audience. All these things are important for you to take into consideration when you're developing your whole pitch deck. And then having this competitive review is important, because it reveals a lot of insights regarding these different elements that might be overlooked. And also it shows you did your homework, which is very important. And then at some point, you definitely want to have also a milestones roadmap, which is part of the planning of like, look, I want to tell in a very easy to understand and very visual way, what if once I get the money, what I'm going to do, and what are the different points that I expect to reach. And this is very important for you to have this milestone or roadmap. You can talk about, oh, maybe we expect to have our finished prototype by July, and then our finished product should be available by September, and then in November we want to start serving the neighboring country market, and justify and explain why you think you're going to achieve the milestone that you set to achieve, and also what is the benefit of actually achieving that. What's that going to bring of importance to the company? So that's important for you to have. Usually we highly recommend having like a easy to see milestone time roadmap. So it's a very easy way to translate visually what you're going to achieve. But also you need to further structure the business roadmap. So the idea behind your business model, your business roadmap is you're going to explain different operational aspects of the things that you want to achieve. So you're going to talk about, okay, how does my technology actually make money? What is my actual my revenue structure? How am I actually making money of this? Am I going to be selling the technology, or am I going to be selling the services or the active contracts or the maintenance? You want to understand how you actually make money. Then you talk about the costs that you have. What is your cost structure? How much does it cost to run my company for a week? What are the costs that I have? What is my cost with salaries? What is my cost with personnel? What is my cost with equipment, with licenses, with legal, with the different overhead that I have, with infrastructure, with rent, all these things. You want to have a clear view so you can show, look, this is the cost that we have. This is our cost structure. This is where we're cost. This thing we're elastic. This thing we're not very elastic. All these things. Then you further move on into your forecast. So what is my forecast for scaling? I have my current prototype. I have my current technology. How am I going to scale this business to the point that it's profitable? What am I going to have to do to be scalable? Am I going to have to hire more people? Am I going to have to do more marketing? Am I going to have to expand to new countries? Or what are the costs associated with all the scaling that I'm going to have to do? Next point, you're going to talk about the risk association. So what are the risks of the enterprise that I'm doing? What if a competitor launches a new product? What if I'm depending on a lot of government contracts and they get cut off? What if a breakthrough technology happens and that completely changes the optics of technology that we have? You want to talk about all the different risks that are associated within the business that you're trying to scale up. And then, the idea behind this is you need to find a balance. Of course, you can forever talk it on. You as a developer, you need to be aware of what is important for you, what is important for the type of investor you're looking for, so you'll be able to better select and say, this is what I'm going to talk to, this is what I'm not going to talk to. Ideally, you want to have as much content as possible. You want to have a complete. Just having a lot of content doesn't mean you want to clamor everything to the same slide, by the way. There's a difference between being complete and being visually cluttering. So you want to find a way to actually, even though you talk about complex topics, you want to express them in a clear, concise, direct manner, so it's easy for you to understand. And then you need to find your own balance of what am I going to show with the time that I have to talk to. And then ideally you want to highlight some key performance indicators. So we're going to say, oh, this is the amount of products that I sold in the past year, in the past quarter, or in the fiscal year. This is my new attraction. So this is the amount of customers that I'm having the last month, or this is the rate of customers that I'm acquiring. What is my churn rate? What is the revenue per customer? What are the different types of customers that I have based on my application? What is the revenue that I'm having? What is the total revenue since launch? Did we have any shifts in the past couple of months of revenue? I made a lot of money in the past 2 months. I want to know, you want to explain why that happened, or you stopped making money the last 2 months. You also want to explain what are the different signals are happening. You should put all these in your business roadmap. And then you should also, very importantly, talk about the team. So at the end of the day, it's important for you to talk about the problem, the solution, but also when the investor is giving someone money, they're not giving to the idea, they're not giving to the company, they're actually giving to you, because your team, you're the guys actually going to make this thing happen. So it's very important for you to demonstrate why you should be a trusted source. Why should the investors actually convert all this money to you? So you can talk about ideally your past achievements. So I am this person and this is what I did in the past, and that's why I'm qualified to do this. And then you talk about the different key benefits that each of your members of your team they bring. On this time, you want to focus on your core team. Usually it's not good to have like a massive team unless you're doing something very deep tech, very complex, because more people just adds more complexity. Yeah, you also don't need to talk about the board members. They're not very relevant for now. And then finally, the call to action, which is the factual important part, which is the part that you say, look, this is what I want you to do. So you say, look, I want you to give me more money because I need more money to finance it. Or I want you to help me get into a specific network. Or I want to leverage your contacts so you can help, so I can find clients for the application that I have. This is the very important part. Then you should be very clear and direct, and you say, look, this is what I want to do, but not only what you want to do, but exactly explain, look, you're going to give me X amount of money, and with X amount of money, I'm going to do this and this and this. You want to have a very clear and detailed plan. So it's good so they know exactly. If you give a very good idea of like where all the money is actually going and why that is important, it helps you to, it's much easier for you to, it's much more convincing than just say, look, I just want you to give me a lot of money so I can scale up my company. It doesn't sound very convincing. So that's why it's important for you to have a very clear call to action of what you want, what you expect. Make sure that the expectations are clear. Also make sure that it's clear that you explain what the investor is getting, if it's share, equity, and how much. Yeah, and then if everything goes well, you move into the actual negotiations. So just a quick checklist of everything. So you want to make sure good introduction, very clear to state the problem that you're working on, very clear demonstrate the solution for the actual problem that you just described. Talk a bit about the markets, the market forecast, prognosis, core market audiences. Then you talk about the target audience. So who is your core customer segmentation and why they're important, what they matter, and why we're the best fit for them. You talk about the competitors, who's also doing the same thing that we're doing, which ones we can compete directly, which ones we cannot compete directly, why we should be doing the decisions that we're making. And focus a bit on the business model. So how am I going to generate revenue? How I'm going to keep funding the operation that I'm working on. Then talk about your milestone roadmap. So this is what I'm going to do in the next couple of months. These are the expectations that we have. Briefly talk about the team. So why you should trust me, who am I, who are my team, why we are the right people for you to give us money to. And then finally the call to action, which is now we want you guys to give us money to do exactly this, and that. These are this is the pitch checklist. Yeah, for better, for worse, not all pitches are the same, but your pitch should have these things in one way or the other. Definitely, we highly recommend that. And then finally, we talk about very briefly about different formats. So what we just described now is what we call the full investor presentation. So it's deep and very complex presentation that covers a lot of details, but sometimes that's not what you have depending on the scenario. Usually you have, it can be 3-minute pitch, but there's also 5-minute pitch, there's also 10-minute pitch, but at the end, these are all like shorter, smaller, conciser versions of the full investor presentation. So you just need to further evaluate, okay, so just focus more and more on the key points and you leave some of the detail outside to fit the actual time that you have. And finally, the elevator pitch, which is not very useful actually. No one gets a check after elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is to actually start getting interesting to what actually you're doing. So it's a very short 36-second concise, persuasive speech in which you talk about, look, this is a problem, and then I'm trying to work in the solution. That's why I want you to give me a lot of financing resources. So for the pitch elevator, usually you skip almost everything. You just talk about problem for 10 seconds and then solution for 40 seconds and then your call to action for the last 20 seconds, and then that's kind of it. It's super brief, but at the end, these are just very concise and constrained versions of the full investor presentation. And then some final good rule of thumbs advices that we generally give for good pitches. So prepare a good hook. So you want to have a strong, compelling starting argument so you can actually catch up the attention of people you're going to talk to, especially in long pitches. It can be very boring and people don't want to be looking at different graphs and charts. You are working with attention is a very valuable resource, so that we want to make sure that they actually pay attention to you. So start with a strong statement or a shocking image or something that actually gets the attention of the people you're talking to. Clearly make sure they talk about the problem that you're facing. So it doesn't say, oh yeah, it would be nice if you recycle more. That doesn't really sound very, very stringent. Explain very clearly, look, this is a massive issue for this and this and this. And we think that is important for this thing to be solved. Third thing would be to be concise and be direct. Often researchers, they want to show that, look, I'm actually very smart and working on very complicated things, and they just keep sidetracking and talking side quest stories. That is not the point of what you want to do. You want to be concise, you want to be direct, because you want to be very clear of what you're talking, what you're going to solve, and how you're going to solve it. There's no need to overcomplicate what doesn't be overcomplicated. Usually we say less is more, simpler is better. So yeah. The fourth one would be you don't need to get too technical. Like once again, people are not really interested in the intricacies of your area of research. They're not very interested in all the technical terms that you use. They just want to know, yeah, just don't get too technical. Just be straightforward about it. Fifth thing would be to tell a story, not a collection of facts. So try to make an engaging, compelling story. It follows like a traditional progression instead of just, look, this is my slide with a bunch of fun facts that I got about different things, and then just talk in a not convincing manner. So try to engage, try to make sure that this is a follow top to bottom introduction, development, conclusion story. And then finally, you just have to practice a lot. So practice, practice, and practice. The more you practice, the better you're going to be at pitching and presenting. At first, it feels a bit uncomfortable, a bit weird, but at the time, you just overcome that. And that's pretty much it. I think we're on time right now. Yeah, we're on time right now. Questions?
We don't have much time for questions, but we can take one or two fast questions now, and then we have to stop to follow the timing. But maybe there are some quick questions. It was very detailed, so there's a lot of things to take out of that. Good recipe. Thank you for that, Thor. I'm just looking if some hands are raising or no hands raising. Yeah,
It's before lunchtime, so people are hungry. I don't want to hold anyone as well.
No, it's fine, Thor. But yeah, we're just on the, let's say, on the end of the time which was set for the meeting. So
12, yeah.
But we will see you again for the market research in 2 weeks from now. Well, a colleague of yours, but
a colleague will be joining. Yes.
Yeah, we probably will get back to all of those issues of. Well, I said probably, I'm not sure exactly, but we're working currently with Marek, Boris, and some others on defining the pilots, and there is a lot about accelerators and things like this, and so we might have the opportunity to dive into some of those aspects which were addressed today. Because accelerators basically are, you mentioned them, Thor, they are tools along in this journey, and there are some of the tools that bring founders together with investors. So probably we will have opportunities to get back to that. I just had a quick look, no hands raised at this stage. So yeah, probably we have to close. So Thor, thank you, a big thank you to you too for making the effort to preparing this presentation, for being with us. We'll see you in 2 weeks, as hopefully many of the other participants. So we'll also give a thank you to the participants today. It's our fourth training session I mentioned, and we have a good attendance through all of them, which is very nice, and I think also good presentations. Quick remember, we will have access to the recordings. Laura is recorded the session. We will have access to the presentation, the materials, and so plenty of opportunity to get further acquainted with the contents and to get back to the speakers if needed with questions. Everybody offered further collaboration, so use it. If people offer the opportunity, don't hesitate to use it. Thanks a lot. See you in 2 weeks from now. Have a nice week. Have a good time and a good work on innovation service providing. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks.